Welcome to the RPA, Robotic Process Automation, and Transactional Process Automation panel. And we've got Leslie Mandrell, who's a group logistics manager at Ryder Systems. We've got Mark Wiebe, a group director, supply chain solutions, Ryder Systems. Dr. John Wassick, supply chain technology fellow at Dow Chemical. And Chris Huff, who is the chief technology officer at Kofax. So a couple things before we get started here. If you wouldn't mind checking your cell phones, making sure they won't ring during the session, that would be fabulous. We have a little bit different format here. A lot of the formats are speeches and people have to hold their questions to the end. That is not the case here. This is a panel. So, I will have a question and they will answer the question. And if your question is on topic, if it fits what we're discussing, do I need this? You can't hear me?
No, this is for the slides.
Oh, for the slides. Okay. If you can't hear me, if the question is on topic, feel free to ask follow-up questions and dig deeper. If the question is not on topic, let's hold it on for the end and let's pursue it at that point in time. So let's get started, and let's just start by finding out about the companies here. Let's start with Ryder.
Thank you, Steve. So welcome. I think most of you probably are familiar with the Ryder name, right? But most people associate us back to the large tractor trailers that we're leasing to large corporations. Really, when you think about Ryder, we're a lot more than that. That is about 60% of our $8.4 billion of revenue. But the other 40% of our company is made up of what we call supply chain solutions. We really have approached how we introduce our services to supply chain from a vertical standpoint, as you can see here. Right, we really have a vice president and general manager over each vertical, and then we have further service offerings such as warehouse management, dedicated transportation solutions, last mile delivery, and then the space that I'm responsible for, which is our managed transportation services. So we're really a horizontal that manages across all of the different verticals where companies outsource to us, so we buy on their behalf and then execute all of their transportation needs. So that's really what we're here to represent and share with you some of the experiences that we've had within our robotic process automation journey.
Okay. Could I just ask a quick question just to define what your solution is? When you say managed transportation services, what you mean is you're using a cutting-edge transportation management system and your planners are planning on behalf of your customers, correct? Or does it go further than that?
That's exactly right. And I'd say it could probably go a little bit further than that. So really when you look at what we do is you start off with engineering, right? So optimize the customer's network as we go into a new approach, and then the continual optimization of the customer supply chain network. From there, we typically take that into a procurement opportunity where we're buying common carrier capacity on behalf of our customers. We procure almost $7 billion of freight across all of the customers that we service. And then we really go into a robust transportation management system. We've created our own transportation management system around JDA, formerly I2, which is the engine of that TMS. And then on the back end, we do financial settlement and support, both on behalf of carriers and then to our customers. And then really round it out with a robust business intelligence and analytics package that gives our customers 100% transparency into the health of their network when it comes to cost and service.
Beautiful. Thank you. And let's move on. I think the next company is probably a little bit better known here, but John, maybe you can tell us about Dow.
Yeah, I can do that. Let me preface some of these remarks and give some context to what you're going to see on the slides. I work if you went to the keynote presentations on Tuesday, you heard a couple of our leading executives talk about digital transformation, Melanie and Peter, and they referenced the Digital Operations Center, which is a idea incubator and proof of concept center for operations in Dow. I work in the Digital Fulfillment Center, which is a similar digital transformation center focused on supply chain. And our center is really focused on competitively advantaged technology for Dow in the supply chain area. So we're actually looking for developing solutions that don't exist in the marketplace. We have other groups in Dow that will implement more of the commercially available solutions. So what I'm trying to present here on this slide is, there's a lot of content. The main message here is Dow is producing product and moving it worldwide and into all regions and almost all countries across the globe. So we have a massive and complex international supply chain. And on the next slide is our manufacturing footprint, and it is global too. So I'm going to talk a lot at the end about international trade operations, and I'm just trying to set the stage that international trade is a huge, complex opportunity, I'll call it, for Dow to really excel and beat our competition.
Beautiful. Thank you, John.
Yeah, next slide, just more fun facts around Dow's supply chain. Those 6,000 shipments per day, many of them, and you'll see on a future slide how many are cross-border shipments. But clearly, a lot going on for Dow in the supply chain area on a daily basis. Next slide is
Kofax.
okay.
So, Chris, you get to.
But that was the teaser, right? So there are more slides. There are more slides. All right, we'll start with a little bit of housekeeping. If anyone is feeling cramped in their current position, there's some room up front. Chris Huff, Chief Strategy Officer with Kofax. I would like to believe that the value that I add to Kofax is that I drive our global strategic initiatives. We have about 25,000 customers spread across, right now I think we're doing business in about 78 different countries. We actually have physical employees located in about 35 of those, so a lot of travel involved.
So, Chris, I am guessing there are people in this room that do not know what robotic process automation is.
Impossible. It's the most hyped, that and blockchain, right? The two most hyped things. But both are real. And I think as they're advancing from proof of concept and through the pilot and into scalability, I think it's the value in terms is starting to prove itself out. But Kofax is a company that basically has acquired a lot of companies over the years, a lot of adjacent automation technologies over the years. And so what you see up here is a platform that Kofax goes to market with. So we're an intelligent automation enterprise company that basically helps our customers automate the back office, so gain productivity, all the way to the front office, focused on really how do we collaborate the person and machine to drive value. And so our platform is really intended to sort of bridge the back office to the front office. Robotic Process Automation is one automation capability within, but this, and we were just talking about this, John and I were just talking about this, where he does not use Kofax RPA, but Kofax is used in other elements of his business. So think of this as a very modular type approach, which I think is probably the smart way. We're always told to diversify to mitigate risk. And so that's exactly how we go to market with the platform, but it's very modular, so we're agnostic to working with our vendor competitors.
So I'm going to give a quick summary of what I think RPA is, sort of the dummies version. So the dummies version is we probably all work on a computer, and a lot of times we do 6 clicks before we can do what we want to do. And then we do it for a while, and then we have to do 10 clicks before we do what we want to do. So the dummies version is RPA eliminates repetitive, unnecessary tasks. Would that be the accurate?
Yeah, I think that's good. I think there's a lot more to it, but I think that's it. Anything that can be done on a computer and performed by a human can likely be automated, and follows a rule set, can likely be automated with RPA. But then you get into the complexity, so there's a lot more to it, but in the essence of it, I think you've nailed it.
And then the other solutions that you have, a lot of times RPA depends upon the data you ingest, and you have to clean it up first, correct?
Exactly. I think same holds true for any AI algorithm, right? Any decision model, it needs data to actually act on it. Same thing with RPA. So it needs structured and standardized data for it to then pick it up and automate.
Okay. So let's move on to the actual technology. So Dow, let's set the context. Why did you attack this problem?
Well, as I pointed out, it's a huge part of our business. And what we're seeing is that it involves a lot of manual interactions. And these manual interactions actually cannot be just automated because they're simple clicks and decisions. They involve human judgment. And at the basis of international trade is the assignment of a harmonized tariff code to any material that crosses a border. And what you need to use to make this assignment is an understanding of what's the components in the material, what its end use is, its properties. And this information isn't necessarily easily discerned from what's available in our ERP system or other sources of information. On the flip side, a material may be able to be assigned to different HS classification codes, and depending on what you can choose and what you do choose will have an effect perhaps on duties and tariffs. So there's some real human judgment that is involved in this assignment of an HS code. And once you've done that now, this code is used for very important purposes with international trade. It's dangerous goods classification, it's assignment of duty and tariffs, it's free trade agreements. So it has both an impact on delays on the border as well as costs and financial impact for the company. As you can see, the number of cross-border shipments that is in that bar chart is in excess of 600,000 a year for Dow. And generally, there's around 150,000 of these cross-border shipments that must be analyzed and assigned every year by what is humans and experts. But we've taken it to looking at this and automating it using machine learning.
So I just want to add to this. If you're not in the supply chain function, you don't realize how insidiously difficult it is to classify goods for tariffs. People that have been doing this for decades disagree about the classifications. The government might challenge you, and one of their officials said it should have been classified as this, and you can go to another official at the customs agency, and they'll say, no, it should have been classified at this. This is a very difficult problem. I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, John.
Yeah, well, we think because of the long history we have in dealing with this problem and the subject matter expertise that we've developed, it's really intellectual property for us now in Dow. And we see this as, if you look at digitalization and you look at Dow as a materials company, how do we take digitalization and monetize some of our intellectual property? We think we can do that within the sphere of international trade and even with this specific problem of classification of cross-border shipments.
So the other thing that came up is you mentioned that sometimes you could classify something one way or another way, and one way means you pay less in taxes, in tariffs, right? So there are folks out there that think we need to come up with the one accurate answer for what this should be classified as. And there are other companies that talk about their appetite for risk. We'll take a little risk so we can save money. It sounds like you're sort of on the appetite for risk side of this equation.
Yeah, I would say Dow is very risk adverse. So, we're going to classify it when we're very confident that we can take the duty reduction. I'm I guess, I haven't probed our international trade operations to see how they titrate that. But certainly, one thing that's important is when you make these classifications, you've got a paper trail how you have arrived at that decision, because if you are challenged, you need to demonstrate how you've come up with the classification. I think Dow has a great reputation with the customs authorities, so that we're not challenged that frequently.
Right. I will say there is off-the-shelf software that does some of this. It doesn't do a good job at trade classification often. And that market is growing very fast. Every time Trump tweets, it seems like they get a new sale.
You went there, didn't you?
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Yeah, so here's what we've been able to do. Because we've been doing this classification for many years and have, recorded what our subject matter experts have done, we can capture their expertise through machine learning. And what we do is you take the pre-classified materials, you extract in normal machine learning operations the features that are important. Of course, this feature engineering itself is a very critical thing. But once the features are extracted, you can then train a machine learning algorithm to classify those same materials. And once the machine learning algorithm is trained, it can now classify new materials as they come in. And I can talk a little bit about what we've done here. When you do these kinds of machine learning operations, of course, you have a training set and you have a holdout set. And so the holdout set tests what you've trained. And you can mix and match things. But one interesting thing that came about when we were doing this is our subject matter experts have about a 95% rate of being correct and 5% errors. And they're usually caught somewhere else along the process. But when we did the validation of our machine learning algorithm, we obviously came up with differences between what was pre-classified and what our algorithm came up with, and we dug into this. And in several cases, it turned out that our algorithm was right, and the previous classification by our experts was wrong. We've continued to develop this, and now we're at getting like 99% accuracy with the classification by machine learning, which is better than what our subject matter experts have done historically. And the technique we've used provides an explanation of how the classification was arrived at, so that if we're audited, we can interrogate the machine learning algorithm or actually, the output to provide the customs authorities with, the rationale for the classification.
So John, I just happen to be doing a market study on global trade compliance right now. And several of the suppliers say that they're investing in artificial intelligence and machine learning to do exactly what you're doing, trade compliance. It sounds like you guys have proved this to your satisfaction. Would you consider selling this technology to off-the-shelf software companies?
Yeah, we've actually been approached already. Even Amazon has inquired about what we're doing. Yeah. Some classification isn't too hard if you're selling, running shoes and these kinds of items. When you get into chemicals, it gets very nebulous because of the nature of the material. And I think this is where we have an advantage. In fact, I talked about the fact that we're looking at developing competitively advantaged technology in our digital fulfillment center. We've applied for a patent for this actual algorithm and everything else around it. Our vice president of supply chain and even our CEO is very interested in how can Dow digitalize, or digitize, however you want to say it, and use some of those innovations as a revenue stream. And this is certainly one that's has high consideration.
So let's turn to the RPA story at Ryder. Maybe we just start with a little context on why you tackled this before we start talking about how the implementation went and before we talk about benefits.
Yeah, so when you really look at our business and managed transportation services, we really have three things that we're selling. It's people, process, and technology. So when you look at, the big overhead bucket, it's labor, it's people. All right, so for me to be more competitive in the marketplace and to, retain customers, it's my job to really become more efficient year over year, drive down that labor bucket so that I can stay competitive, win more business, and grow the overall service offering that we have. The second piece of it is I do like to refer to us very similar like the stock exchange. When you're looking at managed transportation, we're 24/7, 365 days a year, right? We can't have technology outages. It's constant flow of transactions and transactional management. When you start putting a lot of hands on that number of transactions, which we see about 14 million shipments that flow through our TMS on an annual basis, you want to be as accurate as possible because that's going to influence cost and service. And so not just a reduction in labor, but we were looking for ways to become better and more accurate that we could control within our business team and not depend on a constant influx of technology changes driven through our IT partners.
Okay. So that was the why. So maybe you could start to walk me through the implementation timeline, when you started, any issues around the implementation.
Yeah, so poor Kofax here. I'm glad Chris wasn't part of the implementation, or what I would say is that more of the sales opportunity, because as a large corporation, we don't move very fast. But we actually were introduced to, it was previously called Kapow. They're now Kofax. It was in probably late 2016 through a partnership of one of our existing customers. We got very close to a commercial agreement, which we did not end up pressing through. And then late 2017, we were able to re-engage. They had changed their model a little bit, and so we progressed with that sales opportunity. Really, once we got through our internal red tape, which, Kofax did an amazing job helping us develop a proof of concept, right? We gave them a handful of opportunities, real-world opportunities that would deliver a return on investment to us. I was able to take that proof of concept, go back and build a return on investment, gave ourselves a timeline to recoup the spend over a 12-month period, and then we were able to implement. Now, the great part is implementation was extremely easy. It really consisted of once we had the commercial agreement in place, we were able to get the download of the actual software, over internet connection, had my IT partners set up a cloud-based server that would house the software on and be able to interact with my technologies from an internal standpoint. We purchased a user guide, a series of DVD training material, and then also had purchased some consulting hours. And really through Leslie's leadership with her team, we were able to quickly self-teach our RPA builders. We had Kofax there to go back and ask some clarifying questions. And then really post initial build, we had Kofax come back in and analyze our initial RPA, Robotic Process Automation bots, to make sure that we were building them in an optimal manner. So it was a very, very painless implementation compared to what you see when you're implementing, large-scale technology.
So by painless, you're saying what, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months?
We were up and running in under a month.
Under a month?
Under a month. I think the longest pull in that tent was probably about a 2-week period just to commission our internal cloud-based server.
Yeah.
Implementation took less than a day, and then from there it was really just training and getting our builders up to speed on how to use the technology.
Yeah. So could you give some concrete examples of what you're automating, the kind of empty clicks that used to happen?
Yeah, and I'll kind of add into that. When we purchased it and really looked at the ROI, we looked at it from a click-based environment, right? We're slow, or we have been slow, kind of keeping our transportation management system up to date. There's a lot of clicks that go on. We thought that we would do a ton in the space of removing users from clicking in a user interface. Where we started was what we call our optimization process. So we had 6 individuals that worked overnight that were planning, 100+ consolidation or optimization sessions on behalf of our customers. We're an ISO-based organization, right? We have all of the documentation written out, the process is controlled. So we started there. We went and automated all of those optimization sessions, and we're able to mitigate 6 mid-level analyst positions through the use of the Kofax RPA tool. We were also able to drastically speed up the turnaround time, and now we know we're 100% accurate against those business rules. We were able to deliver that within about the first 4 months, and we got more than what we had projected for our return on investment.
Wow. So you did get payback in less than a year.
We did.
That is really good.
And what that's really led to is the Ryder organization has now created a center of excellence out of our headquarters in Miami that has also partnered with Kofax to go look at this at a larger scale across our other service offerings. The one thing I was going to go back to is we were talking about really focusing on clicks and button presses, but what we've determined is we found more value through interacting directly with our system databases. So through API connections, through SQL queries, interacting with data directly in the databases, we do more of that than we do any of the direct button clicking. So where we started was very rudimentary, that we thought we would still get an ROI through that process, which you can, and we still do. But we were able to determine that through our own business team, we could get access directly to our production databases across multiple systems and increase speed, accuracy through that process versus just a robot macro hitting different buttons.
Okay.
And I will say the RPA technology is easy enough to use, but it is business analysts doing this. It's not IT people who already understand these programming languages. It's business analysts that have learned SQL and API, but now we're able to interact with those through the RPAs.
Do you have continuous improvement around this? Are you still looking for opportunities to use more RPA scripts?
We do. It's a continual process, and really Leslie leads up a team of currently 3 additional analysts. We have probably another 5 across our managed transportation service offering that really focus in their particular areas that do nothing but build bots. I would say, and talking with Chris prior to this, we've really got the low-hanging fruit, right? The major buckets, and so far to date, right, we've reduced roughly 10% of my organization staff over the last 2 years. We're entering really year 3 with a backlog of another 10% of opportunity that we're going after. And what we're really starting to do now is look at how can we couple RPA with other systems and tools. We utilize UltraX for a lot of our business intelligence and analytics. I'd really refer to that more as a data macro than a process macro. But how can we get these 2 tools to interact? How can we start using the other services that Kofax offers in alignment with RPA that I can then go replace legacy solutions within my area of business? We definitely recognize how fast transportation's moving in all spaces, and our leadership has challenged us to continue this path, and it's really a journey that's never going to end.
So, one of the thoughts that comes to my mind is you bought JDA, the old I2, very robust transportation management system. But you chose to sort of keep one version and sort of customize around it and make it your own. If you had stayed on the JDA upgrade path, would a lot of these clicks have disappeared anyway?
No.
No?
So unfortunately, JD is fantastic software, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But even in the most up-to-date version, we're still going to be employing our robotic workforce to do some of the things that we've already constructed bots to do, because the JDA functionality is just not at the point that it can do those things automatically yet.
Okay.
I think the other
Yeah.
piece of that is flexibility.
Yeah.
Is while I can standardize a lot of our processes at a high level, each and every customer is going to have those unique business differences that makes it difficult to customize a large system like our JDA transportation management system, where if I do it through bots, it gives me the flexibility to customize on behalf of each one of my customers' needs.
Okay. And the other question I had about going into the database, is it partly getting rid of clicks? Is there also sort of routines around making sure data is clean? If you put in bad data, you get out bad optimization, right?
There is. So we do a lot of that data normalization on the front end, and we've built all of that inherently within the tool versus having to apply manual reviews or manipulation of data prior to putting something into an optimization engine, and then that post-review after the fact. right? You can build each and every one of those business calculations or data calculations and manipulation directly into the tool itself.
The other thing about RPA and working directly through the database versus the actual user interface, because it's capable of going either way. When you're working through the user interface, you're still constrained by what the user interface provides you. But when you're working through the database, you're able to do a lot more functions more quickly than what you can achieve through the user interface.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I have to admit, I'm a little, I understand working through the user interface. When I think about a database, I think about columns and rows and just, to do new things, sometimes you need to add a new column or you need, so I don't get how that affects the clicks on the other
So
end.
what's great about the RPA is it actually has an internal database. So we extract information from our transportation management database, map it into our Kofax database, and then work in that database where we actually do have the ability to add tables, adjust existing information as we need to throughout the life of the bot. And then when it's finished, you can just eliminate that table. So that's where the flexibility component comes in.
Wow, very cool. Okay. So let's talk about for everybody, where next? Where are you going next? And John, I think you mentioned, you've gotten some good benefits out of it. But you guys are looking at a lot of technology at your fulfillment center, right? Digital fulfillment center.
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly looking beyond
Yeah.
international trade operations. We're looking at, what do we do with computing on the edge and IoT? What's the better way to go about analytics? So we're starting to get very interested now in the idea of personal assistance for, supply chain roles. I like to talk about this idea of dashboard fatigue, where we come up with new decision support tools. They're yet another dashboard for a supply chain planner to look at, and they're forced to interpret the data and then arrive at the decision. I think, the next step in our journey is we do all that for them. We provide them a decision and alternatives in the same way that, you get on your smartphone and ask for, directions to, for you to drive your car. So I think that's going to really accelerate the application of some of these more advanced analytics in a way that, and certainly in the way that some of our younger employees are very comfortable. And so that's another thing we're looking at. Ultimately, where we're headed is the use of multi-agent systems, where you have intelligent software agents working in concert. If you look at the end-to-end supply chain, end-to-end order to cash process, it's a variety of roles that are working together to move a customer's order through to shipment and then invoicing and all that. Certainly there's opportunity to start with RPA, but then move to artificial intelligence and ultimately replace roles that are a bunch of manual transactions with automation.
Yeah, when I hear you talk about this, I think a lot of people think orders are simple, right? There's a simple process. An order comes in, you do this, you do this, you do that, and it gets delivered to the customer. But in a global company like you, with different regions, with customers with different demands, I imagine that process flow is spaghetti.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that go on when you process an order. There's a credit check, and if our customer hasn't paid their bills, we're not going to ship them that order. They'll change where they want it delivered. We may have problems with securing transportation, and so we got to do something about that. So there's a lot of exceptions that occur. And so it doesn't just march down the process.
And it sounds like it's more than just process automation. Really, it sounds like part of what you're driving toward is doing better on the perfect order.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We certainly from a customer experience perspective, we want them to, have full confidence that they get their order on time, complete, and in order to do that, you have to remove all the barriers and all the clutter, all the exceptions that occur.
Yeah. And for Kofax, where do you want to take the technology? What do you have in mind here?
Yeah, so I think if you listen to the general session this morning, as well as the panel here, there's this macro theme around this accelerated rate of change. I was with the CTO of UPS 2 weeks ago in Chicago, and so one of our big customers, their primary competitive threat is not another industrial shipping and logistics company, it's Uber. It's Uber Freight. That's their primary competitor right now because they see them being able to scale so much quicker than a legacy company that has a large footprint. And so being able to have the reach and the impact leveraging technology is the new model. No longer is the model around having a footprint governed largely by people going to get it done. And so that forces you to rethink your business model. And I think technology, which is also, again, part of the general session this morning, around the value now is shifting to those companies that aren't just hardware, but are proportionally taking on more software because they can get greater scale quicker. And so how does that translate as a design principle into what Kofax sees moving forward? What we see moving forward is that there's a convergence of the digital and physical world. So the employees within these companies and the customers that they service, along with the digital expectations. Thank you, Amazon, right? Now everything's just a one button click, and all of the complexity is hidden from the customer. They don't want to see that. They don't want to deal with it. And if they do have to deal with it, they'll stop using you and they'll use somebody else because the information on where they should be going to have that optimal customer experience is available now to them. So therefore, they're not stuck. And so the loyalty now appears to be to the experience, not to the logo. And so if you're not focusing on the experience, and it's our customers, but it's also us focusing on our customer's customer to make sure that our software is answering both of those needs. And so the collaboration between person and machine is a key design principle for our software, which means that it needs to be intuitive, gets to John's point around converging AI-powered technologies along with base automation like robotic process automation. And so that's something that Mark and Leslie were talking about, that they need to be on our newer versions, because our newer versions, we have our AI algorithms that are really focused on being able to ingest data in any form, whether it's an email, whether it's a PDF, voice, but bring in data to our platform and then transform that unstructured data into structured format. So that way you can hand it to things like RPA, which the starting point for RPA is standardized structured data. That's what it does really well with because you can set business rules around it. But there needs to be humans in the loop at a specific point where a decision typically needs to be made, or a decision needs to be approved. Some of the rules-based technologies can actually tee up that. But typically there's a gate where a person needs to set to say, yes, go forward and do great things, automation. And so that collaboration is a key design principle that we see creating a lot of capacity moving forward, not just around taking cost out, but also around revenue lift opportunities. And you heard, I think you mentioned about your IP and being able to monetize it because of your deep domain expertise. That's exactly what we're seeing now. Companies use a lot of their deep domain expertise along with the new technologies that they've brought in to create a product that they then can run within their industry and that be another revenue stream or a competitive differentiator if they did want to hold it sort of closest to home. So those are the things that we see starting to play out, but there's definitely this convergence of technologies, which is going to make it difficult on you as business leaders. Because again, that diversity is going to be important in terms of the vendors that you have in there. You can't rely on just one, because the M&A activity on my side of the house is tremendous. Every day there's a new opportunity hitting us. We want to buy you. We want to, right? And so there's a lot of stuff going on right now. And so you've got to be, wickedly sort of agile. So corporate agility is a big thing around using technology because it is Accelerated rate of change isn't just within your industry, but it's also within the technology, specifically the enterprise software market.
Hey, Steve, let me build on that, because you asked me, what in the DFC we're pursuing, right? And I answered that from a technologies perspective. But if you look at, the business outcomes we're really after, one is agility. And if we can be very agile in our order-to-cash process, that allows us now to negotiate different kinds of contracts with our providers of transportation, with our warehousing, in a way that we can capture additional value. We could go out and negotiate contracts that are, that take advantage of spot markets better and these kinds of things, take advantage of Uber freight, but we're not agile enough right now to really do that. So it's through the automation and these kinds of digital technologies that will get to the point where that agility exists, and now we take advantage of these opportunities that, today we cannot.
And Mark and Leslie, Ryder, what are you guys thinking about next?
I mean, it's very similar, right? We're going to continue down the path that we're on, but it's really looking at what are the other areas within the business, like artificial intelligence. So how do we better use the data that our robotic process automation tool is collecting to drive additional changes or to even improve upon what we're doing in current state? And then taking it to the next level of really looking at how do we better interact with our external customers. As I said, I think we've done a lot from an internal efficiency standpoint, but how do I better interact with my customers and provide that next level of customer service? So whether that's chatbots, phone AI, email answering through AI, and then really be able to obtain that data to then go drive additional changes within the RPA team. So it's just continuing to press into different areas that we haven't explored, because if we don't, somebody else is going to.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the audience? Okay. Well, let's give our panel a hand.
There's one.
Oh, okay, we got a question.
It's
Sorry.
the icebreaker. It's the
Yeah,
icebreaker
no,
question.
we got light in our eyes. It's
It was
hard
a
to see up here.
little tentative going up.
Yeah. We got a microphone coming. Yeah.
Thanks. So I'm still trying to catch up on the RPA in terms of where does it fit in. I work in the materials manufacturing, chemical manufacturing space. And so is there applications between the ERP system? Like if you have SAP, tell me about how a bot would be functioning in that space.
Let me take a first stab at this one.
I can answer that too, because Dow is using RPA, but.
And SAP, are you guys an
Yeah,
SAP shop?
Yeah, I can answer something.
So think about just rudimentary, we'll go SAP, but this is any application, right? You typically have people, employees playing within SAP, playing outside of SAP to bring data into SAP. Anything that those people are doing that is governed by a rule set, it can be a very complicated decision tree. If this, then do that. That can all be automated with robotic process automation. And I think what I heard earlier was at the user interface layer, which is how we as users interface with SAP, which is we use a keyboard and a mouse to click through. That's easy stuff. But then there's also, and we call that attended automation if it's working on the desktop. So truly mimicking what those people are doing, those employees are doing, that can be automated, easy day stuff. But then there's things that work in the background. So if you have like ETL type tools that are moving data between big batches of data, that can be automated as well. And what we would say is unattended. So there's not a person basically tending to the automation. And so either way, if it is governed by a rule set, it can be automated in an attended or unattended fashion. With the unattended fashion, that's where you can use server-based automation, which means that with a server, as opposed to it being on somebody's desktop, your scalability is a multiple of what you could get with just one person's desktop, because that automation will tie up, because it truly mimics and acts like a user. So it can tie up that person's computer so that way they're not able to use it. So you have to be very, very careful in terms of how you identify. And I think everybody up here has a diagnostic that says, here's where we think we can apply it. Now let's vet it through these questions, diagnostic tool, to determine, is it fit for RPA? And if so, what's the expected ROI?
Yeah, Dow has used RPA in a variety of ways with respect to SAP transactions. One is around pricing and making sure we have the right pricing. And so rather than have individuals, look through SAP tables and information, that's done automatically. There's another one where we can be shipping a product to one of our distribution centers, and along the way we actually sell it to a customer, and so then divert it. And you can imagine the amount of rework that goes into an SAP in order to sort that out. That's been automated with RPA, and there's quite a few others actually. So, I've talked about supply chain and what we're doing from artificial intelligence. We've been using RPA within our supply chain function in a number of ways.
I would add to it is, when you look at my space, I'd say 80% of my customization across each customer is due to their ERP not being able to be in alignment with what their supply chain business processes demand, right? Whether that's dates in the past, whether that's bad location information. So this is where we use the RPAs a lot, is to manipulate and normalize that data to align with the business process so that it's truly an executable order as we bring it into the TMS. And I did want to bring up, it's kind of different than SAP. A couple other areas that we use it is to go out and obtain or extract information from outside sources as well. So when you look at track and trace, right, we've built our own API connections through the RPA tool directly with, I think, 16 of our larger LTL carriers. We update fuel within our TMS right on a weekly basis to make sure that our fuel surcharge is calculating correctly. We're going and extracting that from the DOE website, right, that we used to have a human go out and pull hundreds of different fuel tables in. Those are just examples of the flexibility of where you can utilize it.
Any more questions? Yeah, got a question here.
There has to be a certain amount.
There's a microphone coming. We'd love to, I want to have a chance to write about this. So we got it on film, but I want to catch questions too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Every organization has variable pricing for certain value-added goods to meet certain goals internally. Do you have an out in the automation for when something might require some flexibility that a machine might not be able to calculate in the workflow?
We aren't, and I'd say we're not really doing that in today's state. Now, that would be more inherent within our TMS process. But we're evaluating, right, the level of effort of everything that Leslie's team touches in terms of where it falls within our prioritization, and if it's even something that we want to pursue, which is really why we keep a consistent backlog. One is to, keep the team busy, make sure we're not missing out on anything that we captured, but we're really using that ROI, whether internal or external, because customer satisfaction is just as important to me as any type of internal cost savings, just to align with what the team is going to be focused on.
Yeah, and that variability factor that you just mentioned and alluded to through a specific use case, that gets to the heart of why person and machine need to work together. And so you can have the machine, RPA in this instance, perform a lot of the front end stuff that a person doesn't want to do, right? They don't want to do the low value transactional work. We didn't sign up for that. We just sort of got mushed into that space over time because the business kept doing more and more and just throwing it on your desk. And that stuff that fell on your desk was largely the lower value transactional stuff. So we find ourselves trying to fit 11 hours of work into an 8-hour day, missing kids' practice, like things like important stuff. And so RP, I think, is really starting to carve out that low value transactional work. But you have to pay attention to the higher value stuff where people still need to fit in. And so you can create those business rules in RPA that says, in this instance, there's this variability, and where that variability sort of exceeds this threshold, take this transaction, this file, and route it to Joe or Sally because they have the domain expertise that can then adjudicate, should it go forward or should it not, or do I need to go back to the customer? And so that's where you really do need to couple robotic process automation with a type of automated workflow and case management. And that's part of the Kofax platform. Again, those technologies that we had acquired over the years that we have converged onto a platform, so that way they just all seamlessly work together. Because this is a use case, and that convergence difference of human and machine that we see being prevalent not just today, but being even more prevalent as we move forward.
That allows you to make more value-added transactions as you move along.
Absolutely. You're spot on.
If you're just getting started, is there, and you're prioritizing, is there like a screening threshold that you have of number of clicks or number of repetitions that justifies a bot?
We don't. Initially, when we started, I mean, we really outlined like a top 6 to give us a return on investment, right, to justify the project. At this point, Leslie's done a really good job of calculating, based off of time studies, how many heads are we going to reduce or mitigate through the tool, so that we can align the stats on what the tool's running versus actually, actual received. So it really is a cost customer satisfaction balance that we have on a continual basis that lets us know whether or not we want to move forward. It's not always just about the removing of clicks. If it's something that will give me a quick win with a customer that I otherwise wouldn't have had, then it's something that we'll push forward with. We've really just established a small user community that really gates all of the requests and helps with the prioritization, but there's no black-white threshold that we've placed onto it. But I think when you do start looking at that, one of our lessons learned that is important as you get into this space is, number one, is how do you release these, right? We can't just flood, at least my team, with all of these bots that are incremental heads. We've really had to figure out how to surgically release to make sure I can get the proper resource savings as we roll these types of bots out. And the other is changing the culture and getting your teams to buy into it. I'd say from our experience, the RPA bots were very threatening, right? We're going to eliminate hundreds of jobs. And so people were very resistant to buy into it, to believe that they work, to be part of that process. And what we've been able to show them is really just through time, I haven't had to fire anybody as a result of an RPA, right? I haven't had to go out and release anybody as a result of an RPA. It's reshifting as we grow. Now I don't have to hire more people. Being able to go put people in more value-added situations where instead of, hitting the F4 button continually all day, I can go have them analyze data versus manage data. And that's what over the last 2 years we've spent a lot of time focusing on, is to getting the team to believe in it, understand that it's not there to replace them, it's there to help them and to help us. And we've really been able to change the culture, at least within our organization, to believe in it and now fully support it.
Something I would add to that is that it's not just about the reduction in headcount, but it's also about accuracy. We do sometimes go forward and choose accuracy projects over headcount reduction because it satisfies the customer more. However, point of caution, every bot you build does have to be maintained, and as changes come in, you have to have somebody available to make those changes. So there is some way between is what I'm gaining in accuracy or reduction on the labor worth the amount of changes that are going to go in once that bot goes live.
Yeah, let me add to that. One thing we've seen in Dow when we've gone and looked at robotic process automation is you need to study the process and make sure that it's an accurate, well-designed process. And a lot of these roles that get created and people are put in, and stuff gets added to their plate, they can arrive at a sequence of steps that is maybe not the best one to automate. So you really want to step back and say, okay, is this sequence of actions the best to automate? Because I'm going to automate it. Maybe through the automation itself, there's a better way to go about what you're trying to accomplish. So we've done some of that in our implementations.
And back to the question, I joined Kofax 18 months ago. I came over from Deloitte Consulting, where I led the U.S. public sector automation practice. So of course I've got a diagnostic for you, right? A tool. And so hit me up after, or I'll send it out to whomever. But essentially what I developed while I was here is a 3-step diagnostic. Now, the first step is this candidate process, right? So as you do your brainstorming session where you might want to apply it, is this candidate fit for RPA? I think there are 8 criteria there. So it's easy enough to, check the boxes and then heat map it out and say, these are fit, these aren't. Step 2 is for these processes, candidate processes that are automatable with RPA, how complex are they? And so I've got a simple, low, medium, and high complexity, because that'll drive how long it's going to take, therefore the cost. And then you can start to net out sort of what your ROI, which is the third step. So what's the business case for moving forward? And there are 4 pillars to the business case. Strategic alignment, so aligning your automation efforts and what you want to accomplish to the larger enterprise strategic initiative, largely a narrative that you'll end up sort of, presenting out to the CEO and the board. And then you get to the financial impact, the workforce impact, because there is going to be an impact on your workforce. Preemptively address it, or the union will be all over you. So preemptively address what that is. Maybe you're going to reduce contract support. Maybe you are going to arbitrage. Maybe you're going to handle attrition this way. But address your workforce. And then there's the obvious one, which is the operational impact. So are you improving accuracy? Are you decreasing transactional cost? But those are the 4 pillars of that last phase, which is the business case.
A question regarding the financial business case, the ROI. Leslie, as you mentioned, there is some care and feeding, there's perhaps some licensing costs, et cetera. When you look at the financials, aside from, increasing, the business case for increasing accuracy, 99% on the classification as an example, what did you see? Did you see maybe 75% of the original costs? I mean, what did they pin you down with on a budget is, I guess, where I'm getting at. Yeah.
The good thing is when we got into this space, I think it was said very well earlier, Ryder's also very risk adverse. But with the speed of technology, we were given a chance. And I really went with a break even. I delivered, look, this is going to pay for itself in a year. And then, we should be able to continue to see year-over-year improvements on top of that. And that was enough to sell it. And then really it was the speed at which we were able to deliver that gained the confidence for additional investment back into the organization. And it's really just with technology, as fast as it's moving, it's been a culture change from our leadership is based off this success is to fail and fail fast, right? Continue to push. Don't be afraid of failing. And it's really opened up eyes to let us to continue to explore different areas. But I went very conservative, just made sure that, look, the tool pays for itself, and that's not accounting for accuracy. That was really my hard sell, was it pays for itself, and now I'm 100% accurate where I apply these, and we should be able to speed things up, and that was enough to get the investment for it.
And it's very easy to build into RPA accounting mechanisms so you can actually see how much work is being done by the robotic workforce and monitor it over time. So it's not just in theory, I think I'm saving this much. It actually shows you this is in reality how much is being done by the robotic workforce.
And so really what we've done is took our success from year 1, like I said, we're on year 3, and have really maintained about a 5% efficiency gain year over year within my organization. And then we track that in terms of how we were able to mitigate, when, what the cost was, so we can show that month over month. And we run that up alongside the true systemic stats, which we've seen run pretty much in parallel. So it really just gives that additional confidence that we didn't just through muscle pull ahead out of the business, but that the tool is subsidizing that manual work that was being done.
Yeah, I wanted to add that there are other business cases for RPA besides labor reduction. In the area of international trade, where you're trying to chase down reclaiming some duty payments, you're going to get to the point where some of the transactions you're working on are only returning a couple $1,000s, okay? And you don't have the staff to chase down those small amounts. But if you can automate the processing of the claim, now you can go after value and additional financial gain that you couldn't otherwise because of the lack of the automation. So we're seeing some of those opportunities too, which it is not labor reduction, it's really labor enhancement to get us additional financial gain.
Yeah, what's interesting with that use case is we created a global platform. Citibank was the lead, but they built a consortium and they standardized global trade finance for the financial services and insurance and banking industry. And now we've got all of the global banks sort of joining it, but they standardized it. But they did exactly that. They arbitraged out the transactional work through automation, which was actually a revenue lift for Citi, and not sort of an arbitrage play.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So please remember to rate this incredible, fantastic, fabulous session. And not that I'm biased. And lunch will follow, not long from now. So thank you very much.